the culture, the lifestyle, the vibe, just everything about that place. The second I walked into that place, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. Every lesson that I've have ingrained in me, I learned from sports. Communication, leadership, teamwork, dedication, grit, rest, recovery, right? Like there's so many lessons that sports teaches you. So I don't think I would be here if I didn't have the athletic background that I had. I think it's probably a bad habit, but it's just something that has allowed me to be successful within my career. I put myself into positions where I have to perform or
Right.
I'll drown. And I kind of almost like need that pressure. We just thought, well, it's the two of us and we're really cool guys and everyone wants to work with us. And she's like, well, that's not enough. You gotta find something else. The first website looked like everybody's first Webflow website, which was just all the animations and interactions that you can think about.
Just put everything there.
Everything, just throw everything at it. Everything was flying around and moving around, but I had a great time doing it. And I built a website that I could have never possibly built in any of the other platforms at the time. If you look at the web today, a lot of websites just start mimicking each other. And if you look at the web in the early days, it was super creative and different websites had different experiences and looked differently. And now everyone just kind of plays it safe.
Wow.
Correct.
That's a very in-depth analysis. I'm thinking about it, and it makes a lot of sense.
I think about the stuff way too much. Yeah.
No. Well, it's your business, so it makes sense.
The reason you don't have the things that you want to have is because the person that you currently are can't achieve the things that it takes to get there. So what you need to constantly do is basically change who you are and continue growing and continue going through evolutions over and over and over again. And I think people get upset about that because they think that like, oh, but this is who I am and I should love myself. And it's like, I'm not saying that you don't love yourself. I'm just saying that like the point is that.
Welcome to VezaTalks, the podcast where we dive into the minds behind brands, platforms, and systems shaping the future of digital business. Today's guest is no stranger to building with both creativity and conviction. He's a leader in the web development space, the founder of Shadow Digital, a cutting-edge Webflow agency known for pushing the limits of what no-code can do. Now he's taken the next leap as his agency, Shadow Digital, was recently acquired by Veza Digital, and he joins us today as their new Strategic Webflow Advisor. Today we welcome Yaya Lorenz. Welcome to VezaTalks, Yaya.
Thanks so much, Nathaneal.
Thanks for hopping in. Now, I do want to talk about the VezaTalks acquisition, but I've been doing a little bit of research behind your background, and I find that your story is a bit interesting. So before we talk about like the exciting parts, I wanted to talk about your background in before even Webflow. So you were actually a CrossFit coach.
That's right. Yeah. I played a lot of sports growing up. I was always very active. And then when I got done with college, I was playing college football. And then when I got done with that, I was always looking for something to continue remaining competitive in some way or another. I would go to the gym and just the bro lifting just wasn't cutting it. I would just find myself sitting on the bench and watching ESPN on the screen. So I was looking for something else. And this was 2014, 2015. So that's when CrossFit really started taking off. And I got really into it, moved back to California, started coaching, and I was actually graphic designing on the side. So coaching was the main gig, graphic design was the side gig. And then eventually, obviously, that switched and turned into my freelance and then agency career.
Wow, very interesting, because like I have talked to some agency people, and you're maybe not, but you might be the first one who has like a sports related background. So I'm curious, like how did that happen? Because it's like you went from sports to suddenly, but you were also interested in graphic design. Like what was the mindset? Like how did you approach that?
It's an interesting question. I never thought about it in that way. Like I said, I always played sports growing up. My family is actually a big field hockey family. So I was born and raised in Germany. field hockey is a little bit bigger there than anywhere in the US. Um, my grandpa went to the Olympics. My aunt was like player of the world at some point. Now my
Right.
sister has gone to the Olympics 3 times. She won a bronze medal in Rio. So come from a
Damn.
very sports background
I
family.
see.
Played sports all the way growing up. That's actually what brought me to the US. I played college football here for a couple of years. And at the same time, yeah, I mean, I was always creative at the same time too. I guess that is a little bit unique, but I
Yeah.
would play sports during the day. I would always design and draw and be creative at night. So actually, when I was still living at home and I was living in Germany after high school, I wanted to go into sports, and I
Mm.
knew I wasn't good enough to be a professional athlete of any kind. So the next best thing was sports management. So I actually went to a sports management school out there. I went there for a semester, and it was an absolute drag. I mean, sports management really is just law and accounting. That's all it is.
Right.
It has very little to do with sports, not very fun at all. So at the semester mark, about 6 months into it, I knew it wasn't for me. So I mustered up all of my courage that I had, and I told my dad, and I thought that he was going to let it just rain down on me. And he was super understanding. And he basically just said, look, I understand this is good that you realize that this isn't for you so early on, but you have 3 months to figure out what you want to do. Because he didn't just want me
Right.
sitting around the house wasting time doing nothing. So I actually tried a little bit of everything. He
Mm.
had a few friends that allowed me to take a look into their business. I spent a weekend in a hotel that one of his friends owned, from all the way from cleaning the rooms to room service to front desk service, did all of that. Tried a couple of other things, went to work with him, and eventually went to work at one of his friends' creative agencies. And
Right.
the second I walked into that place, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. It was the culture, the lifestyle, the vibe, just everything about that place. Plus, like I said, I like drawing, I like being creative, I like doing all these things. So, Naval, if you're familiar with him, he's
Yes.
a VC investor in San Francisco. He has a thing that where he basically says, find what feels like work or feels like play to you, but looks like work to others. And that was it for me before I even knew about that quote. That's what that felt like for me. It felt like play. So then I decided to, yeah, go into the creative space, and playing football and coming to the US kind of allowed me to do both, because I came
Mm.
here to play football, but I was pursuing a graphic design degree at the same time. So at that point, football almost just became a vehicle, because I
Right.
knew like I'm short and white. I'm not going to go to the NFL. Not fast enough. I'm not Julian Edelman. So I knew I wasn't going to make it anywhere. So it was always just like, yes, I'm playing football, but I'm really here for the graphic design aspect of it.
Right. Interesting. It kind of like shifted where you said you're always an athlete and but you like to draw. It was like the side hustle, but then now it became like the sports was the side hustle, and then the graphic design became the all in thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
But I will say this, I think that like it's incredible how many lessons I've learned from sports. I
Mm.
think that everything I know, every lesson that I've have ingrained in me, I learned from sports.
Mm.
Communication, leadership, teamwork, dedication, grit,
Mm.
rest, recovery, right? Like there's so many lessons that sports teaches you. So I don't think I would be here if I didn't have the athletic background that I had.
100%. I actually like so I've talked to like people, athletes or people who are also in the military. They say that there's really something different when you enter that sphere of physical discipline because it really changes you. You have no choice, right? Like when you're in the
Yeah.
business, you kind of like you can slack off, but for you to really be successful or to finish the things you need to do in sports or the military, you really need to like push through and be disciplined about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think discipline is a big one that you learn for sure. But there's a lot of other lessons too,
Yeah.
right? There's getting over losses very quickly. You can't dwell on
Right.
it for too long. So it's really beautiful how much overlap there is between the business world and entrepreneurship and athlete and sports in general.
100%. I'm curious then, like, if you like transform, let's try to get Yaya, who was in football team before, and he meets Yaya now. Like, how would you think his reaction would be? Would be like, oh, that makes sense, or like, how would you think Yaya before would react if he saw you now?
That's an amazing question, actually. So I have a kind of a coach that I've been working with for a couple of years now, and he actually made me do this exercise because a few years back I went back to Austin, Texas. This was actually for the Webflow sales kickoff that we graciously got invited to, along with I think 4 or 5 other agencies, and I found myself on a corner that I was at 5, 6, 7 years prior, which is when I was working for the CrossFit gym, but I was kind of starting to do graphic design for the owner. And the owner and I actually started a podcast together, and we traveled to Austin together. And I took a picture of him on that corner that we actually used for a lot of marketing material. So like I was very familiar with this corner. And I was just walking around grabbing a coffee in the morning before the event, and all of a sudden I was on that same corner again. And it was a really emotional moment for me because I thought exactly about what you just said, which is what if that Yaya from back then met the Yaya right now? Back then I was a CrossFit coach. I had a man bun and a ponytail and like, you know what I mean? I was making $200 a week and living in a little beach shack. And now I'm a successful agency owner. And like, I'm not saying I don't have anywhere to go, but I achieved a lot of the things that I wanted to achieve. So I think that he would be extremely proud. I think that he would, probably tell me that I need to work out a little bit more and get back into shape. But other than that, I think he'd be very proud of what I have achieved.
Awesome, awesome. I actually did. You had this podcast with Webflow. You also mentioned that before you would just work to like get beer. Like the Yaya back then, you would just like work so that you could have something to get a beer with.
That's 100% correct. Yeah. So I was working at the CrossFit gym and I was getting paid by the class, how many classes I was coaching. And I think $200 a week is what I was making at the time, something like that. So I was making enough to pay for rent and pay for my groceries, and pay for my bills. But if I wanted to go have fun, I needed to make some extra money. So that's where graphic design come in. I would pick up a graphic design gig. Back then I was doing websites for $300. I would design a website in a couple of weeks, get $300, and now that was my beer money for the weekend. So all my bills were covered, everything was done, but I got my graphic design check, and now I could actually like go out and party and have some fun. So yeah, that's 100% how it was, and that's how graphic design got started.
That's really cool. Like just kind of fun money. No way. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I'm curious then. Like, so now you started like doing the side hustle. You went to CrossFit for your kind of 9 to 5, and then you had like fun money from the um, design thing. What made you start like the Shadow Digital? Like, can you walk me through what was the inspiration behind that, and what was your mindset coming in building an agency?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2018, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, took a trip to Europe for 6 weeks. And I still, up until this day, we talk about all the time. I have no idea how we did that and how we paid for it because she had just lost her job and I was a CrossFit coach. So like we had no money, but we decided to travel through Europe for 6 weeks. Anyways, it allowed me to get some perspective and allowed me to kind of figure out where I want to go. And I was really in love with this girl, and I knew that I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life. And if I wanted to do that, I needed to actually figure out how to have a real career and not just do what
Yeah.
I'm currently doing and have beer money on the weekends. So I was thinking about it, and there were really two paths for me at the time. It was okay, I go all in on CrossFit, meaning I become a competitor in the space. Maybe I open up my own gym, and I go down that route. Then the other option is, or I go all in on the graphic design aspect. And I
Mm.
think that a lot of young entrepreneurs, there's this cliche out there that, oh, millionaires or billionaires have 7 different income streams, so I should have 7 different businesses. I think
Yeah.
if you think that you can compete with somebody that just has one business and you have seven, and I'm not going to outcompete you if I'm just focused on one thing, I think that's extremely foolish. So I realized that early on in my career that I think you need to dabble in a lot of things and figure out what you want to do. But once you find that one thing, you need to go after it ruthlessly. And on that trip in Europe, I decided that for me, that was design. And the main reason for it just being the leverage that you have in it, the ability to scale. It's a lot easier to build something than to open up a physical gym. I was working at the gym. I knew the owner, and this gym is extremely successful here in Southern California. And I still knew that he was still struggling with, cash flow and people leaving the gym, more people coming in, etc. So yeah, during that trip, I decided to go, okay, I'm going to go all in on design. So I actually came back, quit at the gym, stopped doing that, and just dove headfirst into
Really?
the design career. Yeah.
You didn't even do the whole side hustle build to some. You just I quit and then do it all in.
At
Burn
that
the
point
boats.
it was kind of just like, I'm going to just do this. And I think it's probably a bad habit, but it's just something that has allowed me to be successful within my career, is I put myself into positions where I have to perform or
Right.
I'll drown. And I kind of almost need that pressure. I need to feel that there is an existential risk here that if I don't do this, I don't know how I'm going to pay bills. I need that in order to get myself
Right.
going. If I would have kept the CrossFit job and did design on the side, I would have never really gone all in. And I don't think that's a healthy thing to do. I think there's probably better ways to do this, but
Yeah.
that's always how I've done things. I've always put the pressure on myself to go out and deliver. So yeah, quit right away. I was lucky enough to actually pick up a few clients from the gym. Again, the gym is down here in Southern California. There's a lot of successful people that go to the gym. It was a weird power dynamic because there's all these successful CEO types. I'm a 27-year-old with a man bun, but I'm the one telling them what to do because I'm the coach, right? So
Right.
there's this weird power dynamic. These powerful CEOs are telling everybody else in their life what to do all day, except for the hour that they're in my gym and I'm telling them what to do. So it actually allowed me to use that relationship to pick up a couple of clients and start going from there. At the beginning, it was just freelance. It was lots of print, lots of graphic design, logos, business cards, flyers, brochures. Eventually started getting into websites as well. Like I said, at the beginning, I was doing $300 websites, use a WordPress template and customize it a little bit.
Yeah.
And my best friend at the time was actually working at Deloitte, which is a big consulting agency. And he started helping me with a few of the contracts and proposals. And he was basically just saying, look, you got to add, at least a 0 to this proposal.
Right.
So he was helping me get bigger. And through working together, we eventually got lucky enough. And this was also a connection from the gym. We picked up our first serious client. It was a biotech firm up in Huntington Beach. And they paid us enough for him to also quit his job and then join the company full time, which is then when we went from Yaya the freelancer to Shadow the agency.
What's the inspiration behind the name Shadow Digital? It's really cool. It's a really cool
Appreciate
name.
that. So Shadow actually came from the same guy that I was just talking about, who was the co-founder of Shadow. Him and I in college were working on a clothing brand, just like every college kid, I think, is at this point. And Shadow was the name of the clothing brand that we were working on. So it was a clothing brand. We just really liked the name. It sounded cool. And then we were thinking about what to call the agency. That popped back up into our head. So we just kind of recycled the name and used it for that.
Right. Gotcha. So, I'm curious now. You have this agency, the biotech client. Was that already your way to Webflow, or how did? Because Webflow is kind of relatively new, if I'm not mistaken. So how did you go into the Webflow space and become a leader there?
Yeah, good question. I'll try to fast forward through this a little bit. So I believe Webflow now has been around for 11 or 12 years. However, we at the time, so this would have been 2018, 2019, when we started working with a biotech firm, we were using WordPress and Elementor, which is a visual builder tool. Absolutely horrific, and it's giving me cold sweats down my back just thinking about it right now. that's what we're using with them back in the day. And yeah, fast forward, March 2020 hits, COVID hits, we all go remote. This client was by far our biggest client. We had a couple of other clients, but this client was 80-90% of our revenue basically. And
Right.
we had done a couple of smaller projects for them. And then eventually it became to, okay, we want to redesign the entire brand and website. And that was right in the midst of COVID. So we went from in-person meetings to doing everything collaboratively on a whiteboard to going remote, and something that we've never done before for our biggest project that we've ever done. So we were trying to scramble, trying to figure it out. Long story short, we delivered on the project. However, their CEO and founder, who's a genius, and he came up with this technology that they're using, which is they take greenhouse gas out of the air and turn it into products. It's a really incredible technology. They've done cutlery and straws. They've even done a shoe with Nike. So he's actually a genius. The problem is he's not very good at business, and he micromanages everybody around him, including us. So what happened was we delivered the website after, I think, 4 or 5, maybe 6 months of work. And delivered it to them. And he said, yeah, let me take a look and I'll get back to you guys. And I'll review this over the weekend. That's what he said. So he reviewed it over the weekend and got back. We checked back in the next week. Nothing yet. He said, give me another week. Give him another week. Still nothing. Another week. Still nothing. And he came back and he said, okay, I rebuilt the entire website in Wix. So we went from this like really complicated design with all these diagrams explaining exactly how their technology works to this site that he built himself in Wix, which was really just one long page with a bunch of text on it. And he thought that was better. So we stomped our feet and said that was not the right way to do it. He insisted that was the way to do it. He actually, for whatever reason, made us build the Wix site in WordPress. We delivered on that, and that was the end of that relationship. Now, that was summer of 2020, and we lost that client at that point. And
90% of the revenue.
We were really, down for the count, Right. At the time, we were at a WeWork office. That's where we were working from. And WeWork actually has their own internal accelerator. Usually, it's only in person in San Francisco. Now, throughout COVID, they opened it up to a couple of remote agents or remote companies. And we were lucky enough, they invited us and we were able to join this accelerator program. And it was honestly our saving grace because we met a lot of people through that and were able to talk to a lot of people and met one mentor of ours. Her name is Stephanie Lind. She was our angel. And we had a lot of conversations with her throughout this time. We were telling her about the struggles that we were facing. And she asked us, what makes you different? What makes your agency different? Agencies are commoditized. There's a lot of them out there. How are you guys different? And we just thought, well, it's the two of us and we're really cool guys and everyone wants to work with us. And she's like, well, that's not enough. You got to find something else. So we started doing a lot of research, and I remember reading an article on a Saturday or Sunday morning about 2021 website trends, or 2020, 2021 website trends, something like that. And one of the top ones was Webflow. So I started looking into it over the weekend. On Monday, I came into the office. I told my partner about it, and we sat down and watched the entire Webflow 101 course in one day. And I remember sitting there and thinking, if everything that they're claiming is true, then this changes everything. Because, at the time, I was a designer. I wasn't a developer. I could write a little bit of code, but nothing crazy. So what happens most of the time is I would design something, and then we would find a development agency offshore trying to work with them. However, clients had budget constraints. There were communication differences. There were time zone differences. And it just made it really hard to bring to life what I was imagining as a designer. And Webflow's entire thing at the time was giving designers development superpowers. And that's what it felt like. So we started playing around with it. I rebuilt the shadow website in a week and absolutely fell in love with it. The first website looked like everybody's first Webflow website, which was just all the animations and interactions that you can think about.
Just put everything there.
Everything, just throw everything at it. Everything was flying around and moving around, but I had a great time doing it. And I built a website that I could have never possibly built in any of the other platforms at the time. So I fell in love with it. We started going really hard into it. And in 2020, in the summer, got accepted into the Webflow Experts program, is what it was called at the time. We were one of the first 200 agencies and freelancers part of that program. And that now also enabled us to get lead flow from Webflow. So love the platform. Now we got lead flow. Now we're all in. And that's really when we started going heavy into Webflow.
Gotcha. Dude, that story is crazy. The way you were able to bounce back. I mean, you say you did have a lot of luck, but it's kind of like the same position where you put yourself during that time when you quit the gym, because like basically firing the client, like the biggest client that you have, is like you also quitting the CrossFit, because you also like burn the boats as well, right?
Right.
Because you're like, we're just gonna do this, and then you I think it's very admirable what you do, where it's like, we just like burn the boats and then we will figure something out. We just keep going and we will figure something out. So that's a very amazing story.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, burn the boats is exactly the right way to put that.
Yeah. So so now you're one of like the leading Webflow agencies, and your bio, I look at your the bio in your LinkedIn, and you said web development is broken. And you say that, again, Webflow has become the answer for you. So can you tell me more about Webflow? Why do you think it is the right platform, and it's the best platform that you could build a website on for modern agencies and marketers?
Yeah, great question. Web development is broken on two fronts, I would say. The first one is actually building and developing the site. In so many cases, designers are put into the same position that I was put in back then, which is you spent months designing an incredible experience and then need to work with either your in-house development team or an offshore development team to now bring that experience to life. And what happens is that there's, like I said, time zone differences, language barriers. But at the end of the day, if you look at a developer and you look at the designer, they're also just foundationally different people. You have the very creative right brain creative person, and then you have the very logical left brain developer. And you're trying to make those two people collaborate. And a lot of the times it doesn't go well because the creative makes very small, important decisions throughout the design process and put certain things in certain places for a very specific psychological or aesthetic reason, and the developer will just put it into a different place because it's easier to develop and easier to put it there. So now you're kind of like you're losing a lot of the value and the creativity that you put a lot of time and money and effort into, just because of that collaboration in between the designer and developer. So I think that makes it very hard for a lot of people to bring their real visions to life. And actually, we work with a lot of in-house design teams now. So companies will come to us, they say, we have designers, but we want you guys to build this inside of Webflow. And a lot of times, especially if these designers have been in corporate America or corporate in general for a very long time, they've gotten the creativity beaten out of them because they have designed so many amazing experiences so many times and have gotten told no so many times because of budget or resource or whatever it might be, that now they just play it safe. They're just like, here's a website and it looks like every other website ever. And we kind of almost need to, yes, exactly. Yes. Like we almost need to like push them to like, no, it's okay. Like you can be creative. We can bring this to life. We can do these things. And I think that that's the first step. And if you look at the web today, a lot of websites just start mimicking each other. And if you look at the web in the early days, it was super creative, and different websites had different experiences. It looked differently, and now everyone just kind of plays it safe. So I think that's the first thing. But then I think the bigger issue comes in when you actually go to launch the website, because when, especially in today's world and kind of like this fast moving world, when you launch your website, people will pop champagne and high five each other and act like that's the end of the project because, oh, we launched the website, it's done now. But it's really the beginning, because the second that you launch something on the web today, it starts to become outdated. And you need to constantly update your website, constantly continue working with it. You need to prune your website from an SEO perspective, from a content perspective, but also just from an experience perspective. So if your team isn't enabled to do that in any way, shape, or form, you could launch the greatest website, and in a few months, it's going to be completely out of date. So that happens so many times, where when we were using not Webflow and older platforms, we would launch a website for a client and then hand it over to them, and they had no idea what to do with it. They didn't know how to use it. Once again, you have the designer / marketing team trying to work with the development / engineering team. The engineering team has other things that they need to work on. So the website tickets get pushed to the bottom and nothing ever gets done, and the website just becomes outdated. We see it all the time with our clients. Yeah, we redesigned our website 2 years ago, but we really haven't done anything since. Think about that. Like, think about the pace at which the world moves today, and you haven't updated your website in 2 years. It just doesn't work. You can't be competitive that way. And I think that that's really the other part where web design is broken or web development is broken. And Webflow fixes both of those. It allows us to be more creative throughout and more flexible throughout the development process. And then also is an easier tool for clients to manage their own site moving forward, whether they're doing it in-house or they're doing it with a partner like Shadow. It's just going to be a better experience for the user because it's more up-to-date content, and it's a better experience for their marketing team because the marketing team can actually own the website themselves instead of having to rely on development or engineering resources.
Right, because again, it makes everything complicated. Wow.
Correct.
That's a very in-depth analysis. I'm thinking about it, and it makes a lot of sense.
I think about this stuff way too much. Yeah.
No. Well, it's your business, so it makes sense. And I think that's one of the reasons why you became, a Webflow partner, because you did display your expertise in that field. And what's very interesting is you went from designing to get beer money, and now you were the leading Webflow partner. So that's a very, like, that evolution is quite astounding. So I wanted to ask more about, like, what was the mindset shift for you? You went from being a freelancer, doing it for beer money, and then now you're one of Webflow's partners. Do you have like a mindset shift from just like a freelancer who is doing it just for the money to becoming this partner, to becoming like a strategic operator and agency owner?
Yeah. Short answer, yes. A long answer, I think there's a lot of mindset shifts that you go through, because it's not just freelancer to agency owner. I think that there's so many different steps that you go through throughout that evolution, and you kind of constantly need to reinvent yourself. I am a firm believer that, how do I say this in the best way? Because people get very offended when I say this. I'm a firm believer that basically the reason you don't have the things that you want to have is because the person that you currently are can't achieve the things that it takes to get there. So what you need to constantly do is basically change who you are and continue growing and continue going through evolutions over and over and over again. And I think people get upset about that because they think that, like, oh, but this is who I am and I should love myself. And it's like, I'm not saying that you don't love yourself. I'm just saying that, like, the point is that there's the person that you are right now doesn't have the skill set to achieve the things that you need to achieve in order to have the success that you want to have. And only if you can be that honest with you, can you actually go out and be successful. Like, I am not good enough to have a private jet. So let me go and learn and be better and do the things that I need to do in order to go and buy a private jet. If I act like I am perfect and I love myself wholly, then I stump my growth completely. Anyways, I'll get off that soapbox now. But I think if you're taking it to like the actual agency space, again, I was a freelance graphic designer working for Beer Money. Then I would go from $300 websites to $3,000 websites, big jump. Then we would go to get our first biotech client and bring on my partner and actually start an agency, big jump. Now all of a sudden you have to worry about legal and finance, and you actually have to like incorporate a business and start doing these things. Then you start hiring people. You go from being a designer to being a leader. And I would sit behind our designers and watch them design and have to give them design feedback when all I wanted to do was just push them aside and just say, just let me do it.
This is design yourself.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard, man. And then you go from that into, okay, it's not just about the design, but it's also about sales, and you have to learn everything about sales, and you have to become a very good salesperson and marketing. And most of the agency owners that I know nowadays that I work with that own the other agencies that are in the same space that Shadow is in, same kind of revenue, Webflow partners, etc. The owners are just salespeople now at this point, right? We all started from different backgrounds, and some are designers, some are not. But now we're all in the same spot, and now we just go and try to like sell these things. And selling is hard. It's another skill set that you have to go and learn. So short answer is, I think it's not just one mindset shift. I think it's a lot of mindset shifts along the way. And the way to be successful in this space is that you're constantly open to reinventing yourself. One of my mantras, or one of the things I live by, is strong opinions loosely held, meaning that today I believe something with 100% conviction, but someone could tell me something, or I could read something, and that's completely going to change my mind, and now I'm going to do something else. And I had to learn to be careful with that, because you also don't want to be jumping all over the place all of the time and just run like a squirrel after a squirrel every single time there comes a new opportunity. But I do think that like you do need to be that open-minded in order to win in this game nowadays. And I think the bigger you get, more successful you get, the longer those decision cycles can get, because you have kind of maybe built a pipeline or some sort of moat around you. You have people working, you have bigger projects, which means you have bigger profit margins, which means you are making more money, which means you can build a little bit of a war chest. But I think especially when you're younger, not younger as in the person, but younger as in the company is just starting, you need to make those decisions very quickly. And in order to, I think the only bad decision that you can make at the beginning of going from freelancer to agency or in the early career, I think anybody that makes like less than $1 million a year, I think the worst decision that you can make is to not make a decision at all, because you're just stalling. So it's much better to make a decision, figure out it's the wrong decision, and then go and fix it. Bezos has this amazing framework that he uses at Amazon, which I love, which is the two-way door, which most decisions in life and in business are two-way door decisions, meaning if I go through the store, I can go back. You can, and most of this, we don't treat those decisions like that, especially bigger decisions such as moving to a different city, but they are two-way door decisions. Me and my wife moved to Denver, Colorado 2 years ago, thinking that that's where we're going to live and raise our family. We did not like it in Denver, Colorado. 2 years later, we're back in California. So it's like, even these really, really big decisions are two-way door decisions. There's very few one-way door decisions, which is you go through the store, you can never go back. Having a kid, for example, is one of those decisions. Once you have a kid, you have a kid forever. There's nothing you can do about it. But there's very few of those decisions. And especially in business, most decisions are two-way door decisions. So just go through the door. If you don't like it on the other side, turn around, come back. It's much better that way, and making those decisions quickly and learning quickly than just sitting in paralysis and not being able to make a decision at all.
100%. I also remember like Mark Zuckerberg, one of his philosophies in Facebook is like go around and break stuff, and then
move
like,
fast and break shit. Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
So like, and then you'll figure something out. But I want to add to what you said earlier with the love yourself, like people who kind of don't like what you said. I mean, I'm thinking about it, and it's like if you love your child, you kind of don't want the child to just be childish his whole life, right? Like you,
Right.
if you love your child, you would want the child to grow up, like, get a job or like start a business, start a family, all that. You don't want them to just stay in your basement, right? So it's kind of
Correct.
like the same thing with yourself, where if you really love yourself, you wouldn't want to be just who you are if you're in a shitty position, right? You kind of like want to evolve as well. So yeah, I think you're on point with that.
Yeah, not all self-love is gentle is something that I had to learn. If we're just always coddling ourselves and taking care of ourselves, there's no growth. Growth hurts, and that's kind of the point of it. You're going to feel stressed, you're going to feel anxious, and a lot of people pull back when they feel those feelings, and I am one of them. I used to be one of them, and what I had to learn is that those feelings most of the time just mean that you're going into the right direction. It's
Mm,
a positive signal, not a negative one. It means that, yes, there's something here. You need to keep pushing forward. And I think that
right.
so much of just the things that we feel, it's not about what we feel, but it's the meaning that we attach to it. The example that I like to use a lot is when you're at the gym and you're bench pressing, your chest will feel stressed, right? It's like it's tearing and it's pumping and it's doing all these things, and like it hurts, but it's a good pain because you're at the gym. If you were sitting on the couch watching TV and all of a sudden your chest started feeling that exact same way, you would go to the hospital. So it's not about what you're feeling, it's what you're associating with it. And I think that stress and anxiety are that. Now,
Mm,
obviously, there's always exceptions to the rule. If you're constantly stressed, constantly anxious, maybe go figure out where that's coming from, right? But I guess the point that I'm making is pain isn't always bad. I think pain can
mm.
oftentimes mean that you're just growing and you're getting into the next step of your journey.
Right. Yeah. This also reminds me. I'm reminded of so many things right now. But a Naval quote, like Naval, you mentioned him earlier. He said that, like, in terms of decision making as well. You talk about decision making. You just make a decision. He also said, like, if one of the best ways to make decisions, if you have too many choices, is that you choose something that is uncomfortable in the current situation, because the likelihood that an uncomfortable place will lead to a comfortable place in the future is highly likely than one that is comfortable in the present.
Correct. You choose the decision that's uncomfortable now
Yeah.
because the other one is probably going to be uncomfortable later. Um, Easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. That's a very easy way to put yourself into what's called second order thinking.
Mm.
It's interesting that you bring this up. I just had this conversation with my wife over the weekend, which is you so second order thinking basically just means let's think one more step. So there are things that make me feel good right now, but they're going to make me feel shit like later or feel like shit later. For example, eating ice cream.
Chips.
If I like, yeah,
Yeah.
right, like junk food. I want it right now. If I eat it right now, it's going to make me feel good, and then it's going to make me feel bad. Easy choice, hard life. There are other things, such as going to the gym, that are going to suck right now, going to make me feel better later. Hard choices, easy life. However, the one thing that I think is missed in that quote is there are things that feel good now and are going to make you feel good later. So it's not just that things need to be hard in order to be good. For
Mm.
example, going to church for me is something like that. I feel good when I'm going to church. I enjoy going to church, and then I feel good after church. So
Mm.
there are also things like that just feel good. Going for a walk feels nice while going on the walk, and you'll feel better after the walk. So
Mm.
I think there's also it's a new concept that literally I just started figuring out for myself over the weekend, where it's like it also doesn't just need to be hard for the sake
Right.
of being hard. I
Mm.
think that when things are hard, it doesn't mean that they're bad, but when things are not hard, also doesn't mean that they're bad,
They're
right?
bad. Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily just mean that, like, no, you're not going somewhere. I think it's second order thinking, which is important, which is, okay, I want this right now, but let's put that decision aside. How is it going to make me feel 2-3 steps from now.
Mm.
If I skip the gym today and tomorrow and on Friday, how am I going to feel over the weekend? Okay, not great.
Right.
I'm going to feel good every single time I skip the workout, but when it's against the weekend, I'm not going to feel good. And I think that like that's emotional intelligence. It's really hard to do, but I think that like especially as a business owner, the larger your business gets, you need to get to that point. There's a book that I've read called 5 Steps, Your Next 5 Moves, which
Patrick PBD.
blanking on. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I'm
It's
reading it
like
right
that's
now.
yeah, there you go. It's like that's what it is. You know what I mean? As a business owner, if you can do that, if you can take the emotional aspect out of it as much as possible, and just think logically, okay, I want this right now, but if I actually make the harder decision now, what is that going to mean in the future?
Yeah. I was actually gonna mention that, like, because chess masters, what he says, like they think 15 moves ahead, and as in the game of business, you at least want to think 5 steps ahead. Um, yeah, I'm citing so many, like I'm I'm thinking of so many things. I'm thinking of Peter Thiel as well, because he talked about that as well in his book Zero to One. He talked
Right.
about, like, if you want your business to be deterministic, like, just look at the future and then work backwards. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of like, that's problem solving 101. What's your goal? And then just move backwards.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And actually, Charlie Munger has an alternative to that, or maybe just a twist on it,
Mm.
which is work in reverse and the reverse engineering, but reverse engineer what you don't want. So
Mm.
it's like, okay, I don't want this. What can I do in order to 100% avoid that? And you actually, what you do is you reverse engineer in order to get there. So let's say I don't want to be fat, right? Okay, what would it take for me to be the fattest person I could possibly be? Okay, I'm not going to work out anymore. I'm not going to go on walks. I'm just going to eat junk food. I'm going to drink soda for every meal. I'm going to start smoking, right? Like all these different things. And then you just figure out, okay, these are probably the things I shouldn't do because I don't want to get
Right.
to that outcome. So you can also flip it on its head, right? You can figure
Right.
out what you don't want. Okay, if this is the thing that I don't want, which are the choices that I need to make that would get me to that would mean that I would fail, right?
Right.
In business, there's what's called a post-mortem, which is after, it's kind of like a grueling term, but it's after a project, you sit down and you say, hey, what went good? What went wrong?
Right.
There's a thing, I think it's Tim Ferriss who came up with this, which is called a pre-mortem, which is before the project even starts. You
Mm.
picture with your team that the project has failed. This project failed. What did we do wrong that it failed? And you
Yeah, that's
say
very
we
interesting.
didn't deliver. We didn't deliver on time. We didn't communicate well with the client. We didn't do this. We didn't do that. And that shows you all the things that you now need to do. So instead of just trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I need to do in order to be successful? Figure out what it is. If you weren't successful, what did you do wrong? And then just avoid those things at all costs.
Wow, I haven't thought of the before a project already think that you failed. That's a very interesting perspective, and I think it works. Like, you define the ideal, but you also define your anti-vision so that you know what you're running away from.
Yeah, absolutely. The brain is like we all know this. Your brain is just a worrier and a negative thinker. So it's so much easier for our brain to think about all the things that are going to go wrong than the one thing that's going to go right. So if you can just let your brain do what it naturally wants to do, which is, oh my God, this is a disaster. Everything went wrong. Okay, why did it go wrong? Okay, let's avoid those things, right? You're kind of using the natural tendencies of the brain to your ability.
Wow. Okay. I'll take note of that. So now I want to talk about the exciting part. You were recently acquired by Veza Digital, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm curious, how was your experience in that, and what led you to that decision, and why did this feel like the right next step for you?
Yeah, great question again. I started talking with Stefan late last summer, early fall, I would say. And when he first approached me, we had a great first conversation. But I honestly thought that we were just way too early in order to be acquired. We can talk a little bit more about kind of the history of Shadow if you want to get into that. But there was kind of a Shadow 1.0 that failed pretty hard. We rebuilt it from scratch and rebuilt it in a better, more efficient way. And ever since I've been doing that, I have been building it to be a sellable business. With that being said, I wasn't sure if I wanted to sell it or not. I just wanted it to be a sellable business, which basically just means it's self-sustaining. And then at the end, I can decide, do I want to step out and just be the owner, let it run, hire an amazing team and let them run it on a day-to-day basis, and I take my profit at the end of the day and call it good? Or do I want to sell it and basically just get a lot of the profit up front? When I talked to Stefan initially, I thought we were still way too early in order to make that move. We had more conversations. Then at some point it was, okay, let's do it sometime in 2025. Then at some point it was, okay, let's do it Q1 of 2025. And then it was, you know what, let's just do it right now. And we just moved forward with it. We saw a lot of alignment in our visions and in the way that we think about the future of both of our companies. We saw a lot of alignment in the way that we work together and our work ethics and the way that we think about business just in general. So we knew that this was going to be a great partnership. So I have said this to a lot of people that have asked me about this acquisition privately, which is the most surprising part of this entire process was once we signed the letter of intent, I honestly thought that it was going to be like the movies, where it was going to just be hardball negotiations all the way through. And I had to be the better negotiator in order to get the best deal. And honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, Stefan and the rest of the Veza team and some of the advisors like Peter Lang that were on the deal, they made it feel like a collaboration. They made the entire deal process feel like they cared about me and cared about the things that I wanted to get out of the deal, that I cared about in the deal. And it was collaborative deal making. We were trying to make a deal work for both sides that was a win-win, instead of having to feel like we're fighting against each other and one side's going to win and one side is going to lose. And because Peter has so much experience in this, I will come to the table and say, hey, here's something that I really care about that's important to me in this deal. And then he would say, okay, interesting. We can give you this if you're willing to give up this. And then I would say, yeah, I can give up this. I don't really care about that thing. And then that way we would find ways for all of us to still make this work and make the numbers work. And that was the most eye-opening experience throughout all of this, because I feel like I won. I think Veza feels like they won. And it was because we were all able to work together and get the best deal done that really made everybody happy.
Right. That's beautiful, because I'm going to set another book here, but Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference.
Yes, exactly.
He also talks about that, where if most people have this concept of negotiation where it's like, I'm going to beat you or
Correct.
You're going to beat me, where Chris Voss talks about, hey, instead of doing that, it's a problem solving game. Like, how can you solve the problem, my problem and your problem, and then we can work together. Like he's worked with terrorists, all those people. He's been able to get them to collaborate with him because of that way, right?
Yeah,
the problem-solving approach.
Correct. Yeah, that's all it is, and then you get creative and you get collaborative instead of working against each other. So and it's 100% what this deal felt like.
Awesome. So I'm curious, so actually, can we go back to can you give me a little bit of background on the Shadow 1.0? Actually, I'm quite curious about that. Shadow 1.0, and then now it's Shadow 2.0.
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you the quick version. So we already talked about freelance design, into an agency, into our first big biotech client, into losing that biotech client, into a Webflow partner program. So I'll pick up from there. So it's summer of 2020. We are part of the Webflow Experts program at the time, and we are just getting flush with leads. We were getting, 5 or so leads per week, all super high quality leads. And you got to remember, this is at a time when we had literally no sales process whatsoever. Everything that we did was just based on word of mouth. So, if we got one client a month or so, we were really lucky. So all of a sudden we're getting 5 leads a week. We feel like everything we touches turns to gold. We made the first month that we were on the expert program, we made more money than in the first like 2 years before that. So just absolutely crushing it. And I think like Icarus flying too close to the sun, we got a little bit out ahead of our skis, and we thought that like we were just the greatest entrepreneurs to ever live. So we got the nicest, greatest glass corner office, WeWork office that was way too expensive. This is summer of 2020 when everybody's going remote and we think that we need to invest in an expensive office. We are hiring left and right, growing the team very quickly, getting up to 10 team members in a matter of months. And the experts program grows. And by 2021, it went from 5 leads a week to 1 to 2 leads a month. And we did absolutely nothing to hedge against that. We did absolutely nothing to build our own sales process in the time. I think there's a lesson learned in here. There's a saying that goes, when you see peace, prepare for war. And again, kind of like a grim outlook on life. But I think in a business sense, what that means is just like when things are peaceful and things are going well, instead of just riding the wave, make sure that you kind of prepare for the downturn. And we did not. We spent all the cash that we could possibly spend as quickly as possible. And things started drying up. And we had this big team. We were young entrepreneurs. We didn't really know what we were doing at the time. We took out an SBA loan. We maxed out credit cards. We did everything we could in order to just kind of keep the train moving. And then let me think about this. 2022, at the beginning of 2022, end of 2021, I moved to Denver, Colorado. My co-founder at the time decided to leave the company. There were some differences in opinion that led to that. So he decided to go back to just 9-to-5 world. And I kept the team going. We ran for another couple of months with the 10 team members that we had at the time. Eventually had to cut about 80% of them, which was one of the hardest days of my life and of my entrepreneurial journey, mainly because none of them did anything wrong. It was me and me mismanaging the company, mismanaging our money. So had to lay off 80% of them. I kept running with me and a couple of other guys for, I think, 6 more weeks. Didn't really go anywhere. Had to lay them off too. And it was back down to freelance Yaya. It was just me. The only difference was now I had about $140,000 in debt. So down for the count, back against the wall. But like I said at the beginning of the conversation, I kind of like that feeling. It's what gets me off the couch and gets me out of bed in the morning. Probably, yeah, therapists are listening to this right now and it's like all clicking to them. But that's where we were. And I had to take a good hard look in the mirror. And I basically just went back to designing and building and project managing and doing everything on my own. Paid back all of the debt, started seeing a little bit of profit, started working with contractors and just rebuilding the business, and really just rebuilding the business in a way where it's much more sustainable. We have basically no expenses. We have the software that we pay for, which is about $1,000 a month. We're fully remote, so there's no rent, no nothing. At the beginning, it was all just contractors that we were working with. The beautiful thing about that, obviously, is that if work comes in, I pay them. If no work comes in, I don't pay them. Yeah. And that puts you into a very flexible position as a business owner. Eventually, we started hiring a few employees here once we started to get a little bit more comfortable. But overall, just built the business to be a high profit margin business. And which is one of the things that Veza liked about the business when they started looking at it as well. So it was a hard lesson to learn. It's one of those lessons I think that you just have to learn for yourself, like touching the hot stove. But it changed me, who I am as a person, honestly. It changed me, who I am as a business owner, and allowed me to just see things differently. Two-way door, right? I walked through that one door, which is let's spend all the money that we have. I came back and it's like, okay, let's rebuild this business exactly. Let's rebuild this business in a much more sustainable way.
Wow. I didn't do enough research, but I didn't know that happened. Like I wasn't aware that the whole Shadow 1.0 did happen. But now that I know it, you actually have kind of like went a full circle in the entrepreneurship journey where it's like freelance, build an agency grows very rapidly, it goes, it plateaus, and then it crashes. But now you're in the, you go to the bigger circle now, because you have like your learnings. Kind of reminds me as well, you talk about like Jeff Bezos, the two-way door. It's also, I think, what the concept that you were talking about, where it's like burn the boat something, it's kind of like Jeff Bezos' day one mentality as well. Like that's
Yeah.
what he tells his team, where it's like day two is stagnation, and then after that there's death. So you gotta always think like it's day one, like we're a startup. And that's, I mean, he's become the richest one. Like when 2018, he became the richest man on earth, because he's just burned the boats day one.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think that's what you need to do. And I think that, I like to think that if I could go back and like tell my younger self what to do, I would be able to avoid a lot of pain and agony,
Yeah.
causing other people pain too. I think that like me being stressed and anxious and feeling that the results of that is one thing, but laying off other people and impacting their life is something that I wish could have been avoided. To be honest with you, I don't know if I would have done it any differently. I don't know if I could have learned those lessons without learning those lessons. I think it's, Chris Williamson just said something on a podcast I was listening to yesterday, which is unteachable lessons. There are just some lessons you just have to go learn. And maybe someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, maybe I should stop burning all my cash. But I think if you're in that, you're just going to go and run until you can't run anymore. And then everything's going to burn and you're just going to rebuild from there. I think, day one is a good way to think about it. One thing I also like to think about is the meditation practice, which is just begin again. You can always begin again. You can, if you had a bad morning, you can begin again. If you had a bad week, you can begin again. If you had a bad year, you can begin again. You can just decide right now that I'm just starting over. And it will help you from letting a bad morning become a bad day, from a couple of bad days becoming a bad week, from a couple of bad weeks becoming a bad year. You can just stop right now and you can just begin again. And that's what I did. I just tore it all back down, down to the studs, and then just rebuild it back up from there. And it worked. So I think that there's probably people afraid to do that, but it's the best thing that I've ever done.
Yeah. What's funny, I'm just going to share a personal anecdote here as well, because I quite relate. So just for context, I actually also kind of had a burn the boats moment where, so I was in college and then I had a 9 to 5, and my 9 to 5 was going bankrupt first. Like they were just having a hard time, and I was earning up to $400 per month. Like that was my income, and I had to sustain myself. And so what I did was go learn a bunch of stuff in the content marketing, ghostwriting space. Like just went in depth to learn that, like go buy courses and stuff, and then just try to figure out a way to monetize. And so I actually quit my job as well and just went all in. And it worked out. Like it actually did make sense. And my mentality at that point, like a lot of people thought I was crazy. Like, why would you spend? Because I spent money I didn't have or went in debt. And they were thinking I was crazy. And they were saying like, why would you do that? And I was thinking, dude, I was 21 at that time. So that was last year. I'm 21. Like if I fail, I'm broke. I'm like, if I get broke, I'm already broke. Like what's the worst that would happen to me? Nothing. I have nothing to lose. And so like I will just do this. At least I have a shot to win, rather than like think of what if. So yeah, just I really relate to that story.
100%, man. There's a Tim Ferriss again, who's kind of like the first book I read when I dropped out of art school was 4 Hour Workweek, and it's shaped the way that I live my life and run my businesses. But he has an exercise which is basically just envisioning the worst case scenario and really actually going deep on it. It's like, okay, what would actually happen? And I would do that a lot in those times, which is like, okay, let's actually run through this. Like, let's actually go, the business fails. Let's go all the way down. Okay, we got to lay everybody off. We get rid of the office. I'm dead broke. I move in with a buddy of mine, sleep on his couch for a little bit, start freelance designing, start making cash again. It's like, okay, well, wait, that's actually not that horrible. Like, you know what I mean? It's most of the time we think again, going back to like how our brains are so negative, our brains are made to keep us alive. So
Mm,
they're going to make everything feel like it's danger and it's worst case scenario and it's going to kill you. But most things don't kill you. And
mm,
losing your job or losing getting broken up with in a relationship, it feels like the end of the world. It never
mm,
actually is. And so it helps envisioning that part of it, which is like, what if this all goes to shit? And it helps really going deep on that. It's like, what's actually going to happen? You're going to move back in with your parents. You're going to move in with a friend. You're going to take out a loan. You're going to work at Lululemon during the day and then work. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that bad most of the time. And most of the time, if you can do that and you can figure out that it's not that bad, you're less afraid of it. And then you can charge forward more aggressively.
yeah, you can take more risks. So I
Correct.
love that. I love that. Right. So Shadow 1.0, crash and burn. Shadow 2.0, very successful, good profit margins, was acquired by Veza Digital. I'm curious, like, what excites you the most about this new chapter, where now you have become a part of a bigger team?
Yeah, a few things. The first thing really is the Veza team is just incredibly hardworking. That was one of the first things that I noticed when we started working with their team. Everybody on the team is really bought into the larger vision. They know where Stefan wants to go, and everybody's rowing into that same direction. It was really refreshing for our team to see that as well. It made our team work a lot harder because, yes, we want to be part of this too. And if everyone's running really fast, you're going to run a lot faster as well. That was the first part, and it's really refreshing to have a team like that. Everybody helps each other out, everybody works, and everybody's just really good at what they do. Within the first 3 months of the acquisition, we redesigned and rebuilt the Shadow website. The SEO team was able to get us to rank on the first page of Google within a few weeks. We are pumping out social content and all these different things that we just weren't able to do before. We were able to upsell, I think, 80% of our clients into some of the new services that we're now able to offer because of the Veza partnership. So we just became a better company throughout the process. We were able to, it's better for our employees, it's better for our clients, it's just better for everybody involved. Everybody's having a better experience. And that's something that was really important to me. I didn't just want to sell something and then kind of let it get chopped down to its parts, and our clients are unhappy and our employees are unhappy. No, it's better for everybody involved, and that's
Mm.
something that I'm really excited for, and excited to be able to join forces with even more agencies in the future, grow Veza even more, and get closer to this vision that Stefan has for the company.
Hell yeah, very exciting as well. One thing that we like in the Webflow space, where Veza Digital and Shadow Digital operates, it's a now it's become a more fragmented industry, which is kind of like what I believe Stefan is moving towards as well, is to join that together. So, um, how do you like what? How do you view the fragmented industry, and how do you like see Webflow community playing out in the next few years?
What do you mean by fragmented industry?
Like, I mean, there's a lot more players nowadays, right? In the
Hmm.
Webflow, and I believe that Stefan's vision is to kind of bring it all together again, and kind of have a player in Webflow that it becomes a go-to place for people who want to create Webflow websites.
Got it.
Right.
Man, lots of thoughts on that. So one thing I didn't mention about Shadow 1.0 is that we were, or at least trying to be, a full service agency, meaning we were doing
Okay.
branding, design, content, all of these different things. And I think that at the time, that was part of our downfall as well, because we were doing a lot of things, but not one thing very well. One of the
Mm,
things that we did with Shadow 2.0 is I declared that the only service that we're offering is Webflow development. We didn't do design anymore. We didn't do branding, and we didn't develop on any other platforms. It was just Webflow development, which allowed us to go all in on this niche, go all in on our messaging, on our sales, on our value proposition, and on this partnership with Webflow. It allowed us to go from 0 to 1. It allowed us to grow into this larger agency that we have become. At the time where Stefan approached us about the acquisition, I now started to consider bringing design back in-house, bringing branding back in-house, bringing content and SEO and other auxiliary services in-house, simply because clients and the size of clients that we're looking at were looking for a more full service experience. So I'm contradicting myself here, but I think that it's both. I think that we became successful because we niched down, but then once you get to a certain size, you need to start expanding again and start adding more services. And Stefan is trying to just do that and supercharge that through acquisitions. So instead of him building a team and trying to train people and get new clients and market and sell, he just finds agencies that are really good at one thing that they're already doing, such as us with the Webflow development, and then just fusing them all together. So we're a Webflow development shop, but we're also acquiring an SEO agency. And then now we can offer great SEO services to our clients virtually overnight, instead of having to hire a team and figure out how to do all of this and get really good at it and then get clients, which is a 2-year process. We can just do it overnight. So that's what Stefan is doing. He's building a one-stop shop for clients where they can get this full service experience. But instead of doing it through growing the team internally, we're just doing it through acquisition and acquiring other agencies that are already very good at what they do, so we can deliver those great experiences to our clients extremely quickly. And I think that that's an amazing way to look at this space, because like you mentioned, it is very fragmented. And while I love Webflow and we like to joke that Webflow is our love language, at the time that we started using Webflow was far ahead of its competition. Nowadays, with some of the AI tools coming out, I've been playing around with some of them. A lot of them are trash, but some of them are really starting to find something. And I started playing around with lovable.dev a little bit. And that was the first time that I had that same feeling that I had the first time that I used Webflow, where I was like, oh, there's something here. I think that this could really be interesting. So this space is
putting
moving
all
very quick.
the effects again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, all the motion graphics all over the place again. That's right. I think that there's this space is going to move very quickly, and in order to adapt to it, you're going to have to find strategic partnerships in order to grow and to build and to just continue delivering the best services that you can to your clients. At the end of the day, the clients don't really care how the sausage is made. They just want a really good looking website. So as long as you have people that know how to use the tools in the best way possible, you can deliver great experiences in any way, shape, or form, as long as the end product is what the client's looking for.
Awesome. Yeah, you did. I did get this quote from you where you said, to be a trusted partner, you need to understand the client's business better than they do in some areas, which is key, really, when you're, especially in a service-based business. Like, you want to make sure you can read their mind somewhat.
Yeah. The biggest mistake that freelancers and young agencies make is that they just say yes to everything. And it's a mistake that we made. The client comes to you and they say, hey, we want this, this, and that. And you just say yes to everything and you build it for them. The problem that creates is a power dynamic in which the client thinks that they need to be in charge, meaning that they need to tell you what to do. And that will then create a power dynamic in which you don't get to do what you want to do. And a lot of young designers and young entrepreneurs struggle with that, because they're like, well, clients are not letting me do what we want to do. And it's because you didn't set the power dynamics up in the way where the client trusts you. The client feels like they need to run the project in order to have success. And in order to turn it on its head, you need to be the expert, and you need to come to the table with opinions and with strategies and with data points about the client's business that they might not even know, because then they can lean back, which is what everybody wants. Every client just wants to lean back and you go and do the job. When clients micromanage, it's because they're afraid that you can't deliver. I'm a firm believer that people don't want to make decisions. They want to be told by someone in authority what to do. And the authority just comes from respect. I'm the same way when it comes to fitness, for example. Now, like I have a trainer that I work with.
Mm.
I want him to tell me what to do because I trust him. I don't want to go out and have to do all the research myself and figure out exactly what to do. And clients are the same way. They don't want to do this. They want to find someone that they can trust. And I think that there's
Mm.
a void to fill if you're good at what you do, good in sales, but then also good in actually delivering, where you show that, hey, we're really good at this. You can trust us, you can lean back, and most clients will be able to let go and just trust the experience.
100%. I also think if you put yourself in the position of like, they will tell you what to do, all that's going to happen is you're going to get replaced by ChatGPT,
Yeah,
because that's literally what you do nowadays. ChatGPT, tell ChatGPT what to do and he'll do it, right?
that's right.
So you want to like have that strategy in place.
Really
Okay,
good point. Yeah.
cool. So another quote that I really like from you. This is from a post from you in Facebook. I dug deep a little bit, and you said,
Yep.
"Being an entrepreneur is the biggest honor I could ever imagine." What does that mean to you today? And now that you've hit some major milestones?
Yeah. I love that. I've been fortunate enough that my life has put me into positions where I could take these risks. My parents, it's all started with my parents always supporting me, always loving me. No matter what I did, I was always perfect. So that allowed me to go and take risks. They supported me both from a loving perspective, also from a financial perspective. I've always had great friends. I've always had a great support system. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do. There are people in this world that maybe would love to be an entrepreneur and don't get to because they need their 9 to 5. They can't burn the boats because they need to take care of family or family members or their kids or whatever it might be. So that doesn't, I'm not blind to that perspective that I get to do this. And I was listening to, again, Tim Ferriss podcast. There was a guy on there. He's a magician, I believe, and he does hundreds of shows a year. He's getting older now, and every single time before he steps onto the stage, he says to himself, "One day will be the last day that I do this, but that day is not today." And then he goes out, and then he enjoys the hell out of that show. And one day will be the last day that I get to do this, that I get to wake up and build something and work with an incredible team. But today is not that day. So I am extremely grateful that I get to do this, that I get to build this. Again, find something that feels like play to you and looks like work to others. That's what this is to me. I love this. This is all just a game. I love doing this. I love building this. And I'm extremely grateful that that's what I get to do on a daily basis.
That's awesome. That's a very touching thing. I got goosebumps. Thank you so much for that valuable knowledge and insight. And so, to anyone who wants to get in contact with you, maybe start working with you or have a chat, where can they find you? And do you have any events or launches you want to share?
I would say Twitter, probably the easiest one. I'm Yaya's View on Twitter or X. That's probably the best one to get in touch with me, or LinkedIn. You'll find me on there. Events, we're looking at a couple of conferences. I'll definitely be at Webflow Conf. It looks like it's going to be in New York again this year. So I'll definitely be there. Come find me. Let's have a chat.
Awesome. Again, yeah. Anything else you want to share, or we're good?
No, I think that's all it for my part. If you're going to make a decision quickly. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that knowledge, and thank you, Yaya. And I'll see you around. And everyone, follow Yaya on Twitter and subscribe below. Cheers.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.